So, Carly, in the last movement of MacKinnon's Brook Suite, Migration, we see the last of our people. In this case, the actor playing the role of the last McKinnon leaving MacKinnon's Brook was the wonderful Jim St. Clair, who is just a cultural treasure in Cape Breton. And he was someone who was a great collaborator and contributor to this whole project. And he continues to be very involved in the cultural life of Cape Breton Island. He's a wonderful person. And Peter Rankin, the artist, also plays the role of his son. And then my sister Christine plays Peter's wife there, and nieces. It was really a family affair, this whole thing. So, so the last of our people left MacKinnon's Brook. This old fella, Hugh, according to the stories, again from family lore, he left MacKinnon's Brook kicking and screaming. He was quite elderly at that point, but his family, who were down in Margaree Harbour, were getting concerned about his well-being. So they escorted him out, and he wasn't happy about it. But in fact, it wasn't long after my people first settled MacKinnon's Brook, like within a couple of decades, that migration started to take place. Some of those families moved down to Margaree Harbour, close to your neck of the woods.
I know McKinnon's.
Yeah, those would be
a
cousins.
Lot of them.
Yeah,
my teachers.
Well, Angus L.
Yeah,
and that crowd. So why would our people have left MacKinnon's Brook? What was to go to Margaree Harbour? Was it more favorable fishing, agriculture? Why would that move have taken place?
It's interesting, and I'm speculating though from an informed perspective. So right. I would like to find evidence of this, but I would guess MacKinnon's Brook is a bit tough to get to. Mm-hmm. And I think in the wintertime it could be extremely isolating. And so part of me is wondering, did they just see Margaree Harbour, that area, as easier? Mm-hmm. Margaree Harbour was a very prosperous harbour at that time, and there was a lot of business being transacted in that harbour. And the McKinnons that are there are actually fishers and farmers, and right. So they had a mixed economy in their family. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering whether or not they thought that there was better opportunities, better land for farming there, and that they wanted a change that would help them develop as a family and as a community. Okay. That's what I'm thinking, the reasons why they were going there.
Right. And that actually, you reminded me of a piece of information you gave me today. You had found during the course of preparation for this reference to the Barra people as being very good fishermen. Could you talk to us about that?
This was really neat. So one of the best resources that we have for Scottish history, it sort of is an early census before they called it a census, and they're called the statistical accounts. There's the old statistical accounts from the 1790s and the new statistical accounts from the 1840s, so not super new. But in the 1840-45, I think, statistical account for Barra, what the minister is saying, he's talking about population loss, and he's basically saying, we're losing a lot of the fishers, and this is something that we can't sustain. And then also in that letter that I found, there's a fear, because the immigrants are coming over, believing that they're going to be given all of this support and all of these implements. The Lieutenant Governor of Cape Breton is actually saying, look, we have to actually start delivering on these promises, because you want to populate this island with loyal settlers, but we can't afford to lose these fisher people who are the best in the empire to the United States. And so the people of Barra had a reputation as a very capable fishing people. And actually in Margaree Harbour, like the McKinnon's are a very, very good, strong fishing family. And in fact, the first time I was ever taken out on a lobster boat was by those McKinnon's.
Yep.
Even though my family are fishers on the other side, I never went on the boat with them.
Best lobster in the world.
Well, there you go. But there's that legacy there, and it comes from all of those years ago on the Isle of Barra. They had this reputation as skilled fishers.
Okay. So migration, when people move, and it's, it's digging up your roots and moving elsewhere, it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
I know that part of the reason is for parents to provide better opportunities for their children, which includes education. And so I'd love to talk to you about that, because I'm an alumnus of St. FX. St. FX was started in Ayrshire as Xavier College, I believe, in 1855. I think I have that right, which is really early.
It is early, yeah.
But I think it gives an indication of the importance of education and higher education for these people. I'd love to hear more. I know you've done a fair bit of research on this, but about the role and the importance of education in Highland society in Scotland, and how that that transferred over here to Canada.
Yeah, it's a really important part of Scotland's past, the legacy of education. And when St. FX was founded, I'm fascinated because this would never have happened in Scotland. There would never ever have been a Catholic college in the 1840s or a Catholic university established in Scotland at this time. It just wouldn't have happened. They were setting up an elementary school system at this time, and in fact, that charge was led by women religious, so sisters and nuns. But to have a college planned by Highlands Catholic Scots in Cape Breton and eastern Nova Scotia, it was a big deal. And what that also signaled was they wanted to change their own futures. They wanted to access the echelons of power that were only going to come if they got access to not just elementary education, but higher secondary education. And so the roots of St. FX are fascinating for me. Just because it was a Catholic college established by Highlanders, and that never ever would have happened in Scotland. So we have a Catholic training college. I've done work on female education in Scotland, Catholic female education in Scotland. You only get the first training college for women in the 1890s in Glasgow, right? And you have a parish school system long before that throughout Scotland. The Scots' education was important to them, but the Catholics wanted to capitalize it on their own terms here. And that is fascinating for me as a researcher. And yeah, I want to look into that more. But it was big. It's a huge deal, and I think sometimes people underestimate, they maybe take it for granted, the legacy of St. FX, but you need to look at what was going on in Scotland and just the anti-Catholic sentiments that were there that was restricting so much, including Catholic education. So I can talk about this for a long time.
Well, maybe we'll have to do that.
Yes.
Continue at a different time. We should probably talk about drawing things to a close. It's been fantastic having you here. I really appreciate your time and the effort that you've put into this this discussion. And it's been 20 years since this television show and the piece of music that is based on were produced. So it's there's a lot of water under the bridge since then. My hair has gotten considerably grayer. Any closing thoughts?
Yes, one, and I kind of mentioned this. I was very grateful when you contacted me to sort of revisit this piece of music that you wrote. And the film that goes along with it, because I think 20 years is a long time, and a lot has changed in terms of our perceptions of the kind of history that we need to do now. And as a professor, as somebody who goes into the classroom with students, my responsibilities to help students interpret and understand the past of this province are pretty acute, and rethinking the settlement effect on the Indigenous population, understanding the diversity of the communities that were here, and trying to rethink or understand on different terms involving different voices the history of this province. I think it bodes well for a better future, because we have to bring things out in the open and we have to provide opportunities to talk about them. And so I'm grateful to be able to talk about this with you and to share with you some of the new research and to say that's not right anymore, or we have a very different way of looking at it now, or we need to talk about this because we need to make some corrections. So that's what I was grateful for this little exercise.
Well, thank you again. And I'd like to thank the Halifax Celtic Festival for inviting us to host this presentation today. Also, once again, many thanks to the late Jack Kellum, the executive producer of the television show with the CBC. Of course, to my collaborator on the MacKinnon's Brook project, the composer of the piece, the incredibly talented Scott McMillan. And thanks to Scott, thanks to Symphony Nova Scotia for collaborating as well. It was a very, very rich project 20 years ago, and in terms of the span of my professional career, certainly one of, if not the most rewarding periods of time. And so thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll just turn to the closing credits of the television show, and you're going to see a lot of Macs in the in the credits. So thank you very much again, and we'll talk soon.